All right, this is Coach Schuman here for the Success for Life podcast. I have a special guest on once again today. Today's a busy day. We're covering a couple podcasts today, and today we're studying a topic that everybody deals with all the time, every single day. But we're going to dive into the weeds and understanding how we can get better use from our local water filtration systems, how to utilize and get financing for our local systems to be able to develop projects that can really be profitable, successful, and to be able to help millions and millions of people. I have on Riggs Eckelberry here. He's the founder of Origin Clear, and very welcome to have you on the podcast.
It's a pleasure, Coach. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit more about, first of all, how you got into this, because I think that probably is a story in itself, right? How did you get into the idea of improving the world through better sanitation, improving locally through better water? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, the interesting part is, Dave, that I started out in high tech, went through the .com. I'm accustomed to these rapid adoption cycles where things grow really fast and all of a sudden the world changes. Whoa, no more cabs. Hey, people's own cars get used for ride sharing, that kind of transformation, right? So I migrated to that, frankly, because I got offered a CEO position in a public company. I'm like, okay, I'm good with that. But it turned out that it was not in tech per se. It was in what was then in a hot new area called algae for biofuel. And how do you grow? And the name of the company at the time was Origin Oil, meaning algae was the original oil. And we were going to replace petroleum, right? Small problem, and that is the petroleum industry came out with fracking and dramatically dropped the price of oil to a point where algae became a science experiment. It's like, oops. So at that point, we looked at what we were doing in algae, which we basically were really good at harvesting those microcellular organisms. And we went, wait a minute, we can harvest sewage, right? We can do the same thing with organic materials that just are, whether it's human effluent or animal or factory waste, they all can be extracted this electrostimulation way that we have. And so we pivoted the company into water treatment. Now, whereas in algae, I was a superstar. I was on CNN. I was Fox Business. I was, Varney called me. I'll call you Algae Man. It was a lot of fun. All of a sudden in water, it's like, hello, people take water for granted. Toilet flushes, what's the problem, right? But the truth is that only 20% of the raw sewage in the world is ever treated. And only 30% of the industrial waste is ever treated. So most of the bad water is not ever touched. And yet it's $1 trillion industry. So think, it could be a $5 trillion industry if we did our jobs. But the problem is that the water industry grows very, very slowly. It grows this at 3 to 6% per year, which is less than population growth. They're falling behind all the time. And that's what we decided to start solving.
So take me through right now, how does sanitation work? And then also take me through how with water filtration system we could better utilize or essentially, I guess, become more efficient so we could utilize water in the best way possible.
Sure. So since 2016, we've been really preaching what has come out of some very good research, which is there's a growth of water treatment at the edge, right? Kind of like how mainframes became PCs, landlines became cell phones, central fossil fuels became solar panels. The whole migration to the edge makes a lot of sense. And in the case of water, it kind of had to happen. Why? Because there's been a degradation in water systems. So the big central plants that provide most of the water treatment in America, literally the big plants do 85% of the work, have been falling behind. And you're not going to get more of those. There's just no room. There's no money. Even though we're throwing on trillions of dollars, we're not doing it yet for infrastructure. So these are orphans and really, neglect because, again, people don't want to know about the details of sewage. Like, please spare me, right? But here's the thing. We had a 1918 flu pandemic in the world that killed $50 million. We have a pandemic today, which is bad, but it's not going to kill 50 million people, right?
Right.
The difference is sanitation. If you look at 1918, the virus incubated in the trenches, these horrible unsanitary trenches, and it went from there and it just exploded across the world. We'll never have that problem today, but we can do a better job against all viruses, not just corona, if we continue to improve sanitation. So the way to do it is at the edge. But the problem is these edge players, like a brewery that wants to double its capacity, can't get it done except that they pay for it themselves. They don't know how to pay for it. There's no easy financing. So the very heavy, difficult process. And we've lived that as a water company. We've lived through the multi-month process of getting these deals done. Eats up our margin. We're going to get old before this all gets done. And meanwhile, the world needs more sanitation. We think we found the solution.
Interesting. Now, let's go into the solution as to what you think from a local standpoint can be done to upgrade those facilities. Obviously, disease is going to be an ongoing concern going forward. So, as we start to improve here in the coronavirus, whether we get a vaccine or not, all these different things that happen, people are now much more conscious of, disinfecting things, making sure things are going to be cleaner. I don't envision that part changing. Envision people will start to go back to their lives, but I do envision understanding cleanliness, sanitation, the understanding of having clean water, the understanding of this being in our mind frame going forward. I don't think that that's going to change. I think that that's going to only become more and more in our consciousness and how to always improve things. So tell me a little bit about like some of the solutions that you guys have.
Correct. We're never going back. And this is really good from a point of view of awareness. So let's take a tangible example. All over the South, we have trailer parks. They're called, mobile home properties, but they're really trailer parks. And all the ones below the Mason-Dixon line are in what's called the poverty zone. And they still have poop lagoons. They still have ponds where the poop goes, right? You'll be driving down the road and there's beautiful, green lanes. And here's a trailer park. And next to it is a pond. It's a green pond. And that's literally the poop. So this, of course, is a public health concern. The problem is how do these landlords somehow get the money to do it? So we actually started solving that problem. And it was two parts. One was technology. How do you make it easy and cheap, as opposed to doing big excavations and that's, building sewage lines and so forth? No, just how do you fix it on the spot? We came up with that and got the state of Alabama in this particular case to approve it. And then, the landlord still didn't have the money. And they're like, well, can you help me get a refi on this and this? And like, no, I'll tell you what, we're going to go ahead and rent you this cool device that gets put in the lagoon, cleans up the lagoon. We're going to rent it to you on a month-to-month basis like you rent a car. And if you decide you don't want it or you stop paying, we'll just take it back. Now, investors love that. Why? Because they still own the device. It's roll in, roll out. So they can repossess it. It's the rent-to-center model. And so, the landlord is like, well, he doesn't have to pass a credit check really. He doesn't have to do anything. Just pay first, last security as if you're renting an apartment. And as long as he's not on a terrorist watch list, he can get it done, right? So it makes it all of a sudden easy. And these deals like, yep, done. All of a sudden, these things are getting done, not months of it, but within weeks. And we found that there's a transformation. And we then realized, wait a minute, we've got something here, which is we are really good as a public company. We have investors who are wonderful. We have 10,000 plus investors. Those investors are eager to find cool ways to invest in water. They're already bought into water. They love us. And now we have a channel, a market like an Airbnb for water that allows investors to connect with the people who need the systems. And now we're creating a market, and that's exciting.
And how wide and vast is this marketplace? So are we talking every municipality? Are we talking even smaller? Do big cities have this covered? And one reason why I ask is, I'm in New Jersey, and obviously it's one of the epicenters of COVID. And there's all these different things about how, it got we're one of the most densely populated state in the country. Obviously, New York City, was the main epicenter of COVID in the United States, is probably the most densely populated city in the country. Definitely, I don't know about the world, but in the country. And how does disease manifest itself when it's in such tight quarters? So, is it also a viable solution then as well for cities? Are cities in a situation where their sanitation is old school to an extent where they need upgrades from that standpoint?
No question that the cities need to do something about it. As I was saying, infrastructure has been degrading. The problem is that these are slow movers. When in high tech, I learned you always work with the enthusiasts, never the conservatives and the skeptics, right? They'll follow. Work with the people who are excited about it. For example, let's take a situation like let's take those trailer parks, right? We have some landlords who really, really, really want to create new value for their trailer parks. Literally, the client we're working with, he could have spent $500 to connect to the city. The city refused to take his effluent. So there were, 30, 40 homes on that property. These are tax-paying residents. The city wouldn't take it. Why? They couldn't. And so they're being forced to fall back on themselves. Fine. So what we're doing here is we're offloading the burden. The other day we did a car dealership in near Pennsylvania that had to expand, and they relocated in a suburb area where there was zero sewage. It was cheap land because there was no sewage connection. They built their own self-contained system. We were the ones who built it, and they got a huge boost in their property value. But more importantly, they did the right job. For example, they could have put in a septic tank. Now, we know that even before the virus, septic tanks, there are 26 million septic tanks in America, and they cause hundreds of thousands of bacterial and viral infections by seeping into the groundwater. The broken ones are terrible. And that's a problem that the municipalities aren't solving. They go, oh, no. Look at the city of Miami-Dade, okay? Miami-Dade has over 100,000 septic tank homes within the county limits. And they said, well, we got to fix that. We're going to run sewage out to every one of them. $8 billion, 20 years project, tear up all the streets. Well, why not just incentivize them to put in their own closed loop system and give them a rebate? And within 5 years, they're all done and nobody has to tear up streets. That is the decentralized thinking, and we can help finance these things.
And that then empowers the individual landowner, the individual person to take action. Now, when that water then gets filtrated, how can it be utilized? Is there a way that the individual can profit from that filtration of the water? Is there reuses of that filtration that can be utilized? And can you drink it? I don't know. I mean, sure. What can be done with that?
Well, Coach, you're asking a great question. I'm here in California, and water's precious. But typically, when we send water, when we flush our toilets, it goes to a central plant that then goes and treated into the ocean. It's not a bad practice, but that water is not being recycled, right? Now, if I have to treat my water, well, I'm going to get a couple turns out of it. I mean, I had to pay to treat it, so I'm going to keep reusing it, and I'll get out of penalty zone. There are residences in this town that I know of that are spending $20,000 a month on water bills. Why? Because it's logarithmic. You get to a certain level and you're being hammered. Those people would love to have reuse, right? So reuse percentages will grow. I mean, look at in the world, who's the best recycler? It's Israel by far. Almost 90% of their water is recycled. Number 2 in the world is Spain with 20%. US 1%, right? And it's because we have these big central systems that were designed long before people were thinking about recycling. Now we need to recycle. The point I'm making is, if you're doing it yourself, now you can take that gray water, clean it up. You're not, the easy way is to use it for irrigation, or sprinkler, right? I mean, yeah, you can do it for drinking, but that takes it to a whole new level, and you got to make sure that it's really, really, really sanitized. So the best way to say is, look, take your black water and gray water, process it, sprinkle your lawn with it, and that's good enough, right? Wash your hands with it if you want, shower, but really not drinking it. And that is very promising. So we have lots of demand because these big central systems have basically, not through their own fault, they just have not been funded. We have a town in here in Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles, that their water just went completely to crap. And everybody goes, "What's going on? Well, what happened?" And the utility said, "But we've been asking for money from the city council for 10 years now." And the city council's like, "Oh, I don't know, man. Dog ate the homework." So all the politicians are running for shelter. Meanwhile, the water's filthy, right? And that is not okay. So fine, just do it yourself, right? We enable do-it-yourself water treatment, mostly for businesses. I mean, the real gain is going to be, let me give you an example of why it's so much better to work with a business. A 2,500 cow dairy farm generates as much manure as all the humans in the city of Miami do. So we need to, okay, fine, city of Miami, 400,000 people, we should do something about it. But look at all those farms, and you know what they're doing? They're not treating that water, that poop. So anyway, the gain is industrial, agricultural, animal farms, etc. And believe me, the demand's there.
And that reuse, obviously, since they're doing farming, there's an easy reuse for all of this, right? So they're reusing it in the food they're growing, for the animals to be able to get grass and be able to feed. And so you're able to reuse that water. Is that something that could solve? And this is just my ignorance of it. Is this something that could solve some of the issues that California has with land being dried up, lack of water at different periods throughout the year in different counties, right? Is that something that could begin to solve that issue because that water is not being recycled? Will this create more water? Now, it may not be for drinking water, but if you're utilizing this water for your farming, now you have more water that is saved for your drinking water, and you have less of an issue with a lack of water. Is that something that can begin to solve that?
Recycling is one of the easier ways. It's much cheaper, for example, than desalination, which is very energy intensive and it's complicated. And I think desalination is a good idea, but it's kind of a last resort. Do all the normal things first, right? Like properly economize on water. Don't leave the tap running all day. Recycle. When a storm hits, don't let all the water go into the ocean. Just the standard stuff, and then start desalinating. I think California could, if it applied proper best practices, would definitely be okay for water.
Interesting. Now, are there other uses for it? So you talked about water. Is that waste able to be used for other areas? And I'm thinking, fuel for. Is it able to be used for farming in growing vegetables? Is any of those things? Is that a path to begin other solutions utilizing waste?
Sure. Well, if you go to originclear.com and there's a big red intrusive red margin at the top. If you click on that, it'll take you into a whole bunch of our successes. And the very first video has me going to Spain, where they implemented our technology to separate the pig manure into beautiful black fertilizer, organic grade fertilizer, and water that could be used for irrigation. All right. And that's a beautiful zero waste solution. That fertilizer has value, right? Now, here's what's interesting. That was a good commercial plan. It's a showcase. It's kind of a model home and the pig farming industry is booming in Spain, mainly because China has been having terrible trouble with swine flu, more flu. But so China kind of like the flu specialist, don't you think?
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, so Spain has been booming and they need this help, et cetera. But here's what's crazy. Even with a proven system, we weren't seeing the sales happen quickly. Why? Because it's a $2 million solution, and people have to do capital cycle and go round and round in circles and blah, blah, blah. So again, we came up with an easy solution to get people going with a rental of a much smaller interim solution to sanitize the lagoon, just like the trailer parks, and then later get them going. So here we want to get to a great solution where you have beneficial products. And you mentioned fuel, no question, you can make fuel from these things. But to get there, you're going to have to spend capital, right? And people don't spend capital easily. It's a tough, like when you decide to buy a house, it's a big freaking deal, right? So but if I made it like, look, take this house and I'll make it easy for you. Pay your rent and I'll take back and you'll have an option to buy and I'll take back the paper. Don't worry about it. It's all good. All of a sudden, like, well, fine. Great house by the ocean, whatever. And I jump into it. I'm renting it. And by the way, I'm buying it and the owner's taking it back. All the problems went away. And I'll even pay a little bit more for that convenience. So that's what we're finding out is that all of a sudden the hog farm industry in America is super excited about this way of getting in easy, funding it with investor money, solves their immediate problem, and then they can finally get into the proper thing. Remember that there's a hog farm in Indiana right now that is just off Highway 65, and they are spending $4 million a month to waste management to haul away their manure. I mean, come on, really? And they can have a system that would cost far less than that one-time cost and generate beneficial products they could sell. I mean, it's mind-boggling.
So what becomes the ROI on this for individual businesses taking this on, to give a picture for people of they decide to go and do this, what becomes their ROI on it?
Well, the first ROI is incalculable, which is that the regulators stop fining you, right? My friends with the trailer park, they're being hit by the Alabama EPA all the time. Every month they're getting a fine. Those farms up in Wisconsin are getting hit or are being forced to truck things out. So the first thing is an avoided hassle and cost and potentially stopping the business and so forth. So there's that. But then there is a tremendous ROI. Take, for example, that big Indiana farm. They're going to avoid the $4 million a month expense. Now they're going to have a capital expense and some maintenance. But let's say that it's going to cost on a amortized basis, it costs them $250,000 a month, which is, I'm overestimating it big time, but let's say it's $250,000 a month. Well, they'll also have product they can sell. They have the beautiful gardener's quality black fertilizer. Think about pig manure. What good quality manure that is. The nutrients are amazing, right? So, and great irrigation water for everyone. Now, Indiana doesn't have a water problem, but there's stockyards here in California that are literally in the middle of a desert and they're piping in the water. Come on. You've got a solution right there. So it has, it's hard to say first of all, you avoid the expense. Then secondly, you have a gain in income. You can see it's hard to say, it's in the thousands of percents over time. The question is how to get people past the capital hurdle. And that's where we felt, okay, it's the money, stupid. It's the money. If we solve the money, we're good. This startup of ours is called Investor Water, and we just did our first deal. We're about to announce it. I recommend that people join me on originclear.com. Click on CEO. I do a briefing every Thursday, and you'll hear the latest updates.
Very cool, and I put that up there so people can find you. What stands in their way? Because it seems all very logical. What is money the key thing that stands in the way of more people doing this? Is it understanding and knowledge? What are some of the current obstacles that you have to get through to get people in business to get more on board?
Sure. Well, let's take Airbnb as an analogy, right? So prior to Airbnb, there was hotels and then small, crafty B&Bs, with little lace curtains, and that was kind of the state of the art. Airbnb came along and industrialized the B&B space. Now, early on, its first round was done at a $20 million valuation. I mean, oh my God, these people have made 130,000% on their money.
Right.
because they were the first round, just like we're in now. And what happened early on, well, the first thing that Airbnb did was they practiced it themselves. The founders of Airbnb went and did it for their own first couple apartments in San Francisco themselves. So they do proof of concept. Okay, this is how it works. Blah, blah. Okay, great. Now you take that proof of concept and you go to the VCs and they start doing cool things with you. And that's where we're at right now. We're doing these experiments. Now, let's say you move beyond that. You'll be dealing with early adopters. You're dealing with people who are pretty smart. You're not going to deal with the crowd. Same thing with Airbnb was a kind of a cool thing, like kind of an insider thing for a long time. And then it exploded, right? So we think that we're going to have a phase where, and thank God, because I don't want it to explode, where we're going to have these little proofs of concept, and then we're going to have a first really stupid marketplace with like eBay listings, like, oh, here's a water company, here's some money, and kind of like stitch it together. But what we are going to do is make sure the technology is good. We're very good technologists. So we're going to make sure that the solutions, even if somebody else does it, just like Airbnb makes sure there's quality accommodations, right? We're going to make sure that the solutions work so we don't get a bad rep. So it's got to be a marketplace that has great quality and solves problems quickly. And we're there to make that happen. We're in the testing phase right now.
And what is the from concept to launch at each one of these? What is the time frame that it takes to get one of these systems up and running?
Well, the first deal that in fact will be, I've been relating in my weekly briefings and is finally coming to fruition. We expect to announce it very soon. Is that there's a business? It's a special business called pool flushing, where you run kind of a kidney dialysis system through the pool to recycle the pool and get rid of all the minerals and the, already peed in the pool, and you can't shock that out. You're going to have to flush it. Now, homeowners can just dump all the water and put new in. First of all, that wastes 20,000 gallons. More importantly, it can crack the pool. Long story short, there's a business of pulling up a trailer with reverse osmosis membranes and basically desalinate the pool. And we did a deal where, in fact, Origin Clear funded one of these units for a tradesperson who's now booked 20 of these in the next month. Each of them is about $600 to $800. That's so much more profitable than just going in and cleaning the pool, right? So we've improved their business model and we've made it super easy. This gentleman, Ryan, he's stepping in for first and last. It's $3,000 a month. It's a no-brainer for him. He's going to make, what is it? He's going to make $20,000 next month. So I'll pay $3,000, right? So we did that in a matter of a couple of months. The next one we're doing is this trailer park in Alabama. We're already working with them to finalize it. Next after that is a hog farm. Now this gets interesting. So we're rolling on this.
Really, really interesting stuff. I want to let everybody know where they can reach you and find out more about it. I really appreciate you coming on. This is a topic that is part of everybody's daily life, but not everybody understands until now. Where can they find out more about you? I posted the originclear.com for more information. Do you have Twitter or anything like that?
Facebook.com/OriginClear is great. And of course, yes, we have Twitter Origin Clear as well, Instagram. Also, go to originclear.com/CEO, which is the CEO button at the top. And that will have the briefings that I do. And those are great because every Thursday I'm talking like this on Zoom and I'm, putting up slides and I'm giving updates. And people are getting a weekly report from the CEO, which is pretty unique. And I invite anyone who's interested to join me.
That's awesome. I'll put that up there real quick. Oh, there we go.
Perfect.
Good. And they get their daily briefings from you. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, Riggs. Really interesting stuff I honestly never thought I'd be discussing. But, when I see something that's fascinating and an opportunity to talk more about it, I love to have them on. That's what this podcast is all about. It's about getting people to understand things that can really change the world for better, and create opportunities and success. So I wish you the very, very best. And if there's anything I could ever do, I'm glad to help.
Well, Coach, thank you very much for the time. It's been a great pleasure. And I look forward to hearing from your fans.
All right. Thanks so much, Riggs.